Now that you have your Geofilter design digitized and ready to submit, let's cover a few things that you should keep in mind throughout the submission process. We already covered the submission guidelines in Module 1, but be sure to revisit that just to make sure that your Geofilter fits all the criteria. Here I'll share a few important reminders and pieces of advice to keep in mind throughout the submission process. If you're submitting a community geofilter, just keep in mind that the geofence that you select should be relevant to the geofilter that you have designed. For example, if you're submitting for a city, just keep the geofence around the city and try not to include any surrounding cities or unrelated areas. Also, try not to include too many partly related areas on the outskirts of your geofence. Even if it's technically related, if it's not apparent or obvious to Snapchat, they may feel like it's not relevant and it may be rejected. For example, if you're submitting for a school, it's best to keep the geofence around the campus, even if there happens to be student-related areas outside of campus. And that example happens to be a real one, as my second geofilter was for my university, and I included a few walkways on the outskirts of campus that weren't directly related to the campus, but they were still student related. The problem was that from the map, it doesn't look like the walkway was directly related to the campus. So my first submission was rejected. I submitted it again with no changes to the design, and I just put the geofence around the campus, and it was accepted the second time. So try to keep the geofence very specific and relevant to the area that you designed your geofilter for. If you're submitting for an on-demand geofilter, a big thing to keep in mind is the time zone. For example, if you're in New York when you submit a geofilter, the submission times you set will be in Eastern Standard Time. For the most part, this isn't an issue unless you're submitting geofilters in a different time zone. For example, if you're in New York and you want to submit a geofilter for an event in California, your times are still going to be in Eastern Standard Time, so you'll need to adjust your times manually in order to adjust for the time zone difference. So in this example, the geofilter submission time will take on the time zone of where you're submitting it and not where the geofence is actually located. If the event in California is supposed to start at 3 p.m., then you'll have to manually adjust your submission time to 6 p.m. in order to adjust for the 3-hour time difference. If you plan on submitting on-demand geofilters for yourself or for clients in several different time zones, then you'll probably have to make this conversion several different times. An easy way to make the conversion is to go to Google and then type in the event start time and time zone, and then followed by to and then your time zone. After you hit enter, it should provide you with a converted start time that you can use for your submission. Now those are a couple of important reminders, but be sure to revisit the full list in Module 1 of the submission guidelines for both on-demand and community geofilters. Now in the next lesson, we'll cover how you can submit a community geofilter.